So welcome, board members. It's nice to see you all in person. We met yesterday, but it's always nice to see you not online and in the flesh. Thank you for your support for the PRP and for your contributions to the board. But really today I'd just like to invite you to give some reflections on the past year since we were here 12 months ago, and perhaps some thoughts about the future and where we might go next. Now, strictly, I'm going to have to be quite firm with you, I'm afraid. A couple of minutes each, if that's okay. I'll stop after 4 of you and ask if there are any questions from the audience, and then we'll carry on. So I hope that's okay. So, well, Bridget, you're in the hot seat, first in the row. Could I ask you to give your reflections, please? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Lovely to see so many people here. So the first thing I must do is thank the team who've supported me on the work with the environment principles, which there's sort of various nice printed summaries for you to have a look at today. So there are opportunities for at-scale environmental enhancement across the whole of our region. And, you know, one of the purposes of the effort I put back in 2018 when I joined what was then the Oxcam, the Oxford-Cambridge board, was to make sure that the environment wasn't just an add-on, wasn't just a subtext, as is so often the case, but was actually a sort of overarching umbrella that hung over everything we did, so that, you know, everything we promoted left the environment in a better place, and that include housing and transport and nature recovery and all the rest of it. So if I just give you an example about what could be achieved. So is there anyone from the RSPB here? Now that's a shame, but I will tell them that I've given them a shout out. So there's been some terrific work going on in Cambridgeshire at Ouse Fen. There is, I think it's the largest gravel extraction site, I think in Europe, going on there. And the RSPB have been working with, you know, the people digging out these millions and millions of tons of gravel to create a new wetland. The original reason for doing with this was to create a habitat for birds that weren't there, and this was marsh harriers, reed warblers and bitterns. And when I went up to see it, when some of this work had started, so the wetland was there, but the extraction was going on, and the wetland would move and increase as they finished taking out all the gravel. And the bitterns were there, and I saw a marsh harrier, which I'd never seen before, and I'm sure the reed warblers were there. Now, there's massive opportunities to roll out that fantastic work for new wetland creation associated with East West Rail. So as East West Rail, I'm looking at Will here, as East West Rail, you know, ploughs its way from Oxford to Cambridge, I'm sure there's going to be lots and lots of disruption to the landscape. So, you know, this is a lovely model already prepared by the RSPB, where we could create a network of connected new wetlands, you know, across the whole of the region. So, and none of us can do it in isolation. Nature doesn't understand county and district boundaries. So there needs to be coordination to make sure that we capitalise on all these opportunities to create something there for many future generations. Thank you. Thank you, Bridget. I should perhaps introduce each member as well, in case you don't know them. So Bridget is obviously the leader of South Cambridgeshire District Council and is the environment champion on our board, and she's also on the CPCA board. Susan, the leader of Oxford City Council.
Thank you very much, and you have to excuse the rather deeper tones than normal. I'm afraid I've got a bit of a cold, so I don't normally quite sound like this. But thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today. I think what I would just like to focus on really is the importance of this region to the country's economy. You know, it's not, I hope everyone in this room is fully aware of the fact that this region, it's not accidental that we link from Oxford to Cambridge, and that many different groups have come together along the same geography. It is because we are net contributors to the national economy. We are a very powerful engine in our country's economy, and we have many, many things in common, from innovation, science, health, and indeed the work that we've been doing collectively around the environment, and innovation in particular around the environment. And all of those things mean that we have a very powerful voice, not just in our own country, but actually internationally as well. And I think one of the things that we've sought to do as a pan-regional partnership is to try and make sure that we are making sure that voice is being heard internationally, that we are making the case for investment in our region in the same way that many other regions up and down the country are making that case for investment. Because we're very conscious that this isn't a competition between Cambridge and Bolton in this country. It's more like a competition between our region, Cambridge, Oxford, Milton Keynes, and Boston or Beijing. And actually, we need to make sure that we are getting that investment in the jobs, in the homes, and in the economy that we need to ensure that we have a really great future for our children and for our grandchildren, and that we're getting the investment that we need. Because I think the other alternative is that we don't get that investment, and actually it doesn't mean things will just stay as they are. It will actually mean that people start moving out of our region, and again, they're not going to be moving to other areas of this country. They're potentially going to be moving further afield to other countries. So I do think we have a really important economic case to make to government, but also internationally, that this is a great place to invest in. We have so many amazing, innovative companies, so much amazing research going on in our fantastic universities. And I think it is very interesting that there are many different groups who are operating actually on very similar geographies around here, because this does actually make sense as a geography. It makes sense because there are actual real connections, particularly through our universities across this region. So I'm very interested to hear from other people in this room, because I think we've all got a lot to learn from each other. And that's one of the reasons why this partnership has been really important, is because it has continuously brought us together to hear from each other and to learn and to work out how we can network and make all of our local economies that much more strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. So we've already heard about two of the core themes of the partnership, in terms of the environment, in terms of investment, and now we have Councillor Liz Lethman, who is the chair of England's Economic Heartland, and also in her spare time is the leader of Oxfordshire County Council.
Well, yes, in my spare time, absolutely, because I am completely dedicated to what we are doing in England's economic heartland. And everything that Susan has said just now is true, but, big but. The economy of this region is affected by the fact that we suffer from massive traffic congestion, and it's actually having a negative impact on productivity. And that, in my opinion, is what we need to be making a case to government about. This region is a powerhouse, but it's being held back. And it's being held back by the fact that we have a lot of people working in this region, a lot of people coming to live in this region, but we do not have the transport networks to support the innovation that is so important, not just to this region, but to this country. And I can see David Hughes sitting at the table in front of me. David is the Managing Director of East West Rail. And it's been an absolute landmark this year that East West Rail has been given the funding that it needs to progress. But we are also waiting to hear from government whether, in fact, passenger services are going to start next year. We hope they will, between Oxford and Bletchley. But what England's economic heartland is doing is looking beyond EEH, looking at how people can connect to the railway line through active travel, through using bus services rather than having to use their cars. And most importantly, that general connectivity from east to west that goes right the way down to Bristol, through Oxford and across to Cambridge. And it's great that that line has been reopened this year on a temporary basis to see if that line's going to work. But there's much that needs to be done. An enormous amount of investment that is required in this region if we are going to compete internationally and if we are going to be the powerhouse for generating economic development for this country as a whole. So it is immensely important to me and to my colleagues in EEH that we progress this with government as swiftly as possible and make sure that it's not just about a railway line, but about the whole ecosystem around that railway line that will make this region the great region that it is and which it should become in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Get your questions ready, because we'll have questions from the floor for our first 4 panellists in a second. Mayor Nick, you're our only mayor in the region. You seem to be racking up an awful lot of train miles at the moment in a different city each day. But what are your reflections?
Thank you, Richard. I'm going to give a more abstract response. Bearing in mind a year ago when I was last here, I had a lot shorter hair and I didn't have a moustache. I'm very much aware that I'm probably a bit shaggy-haired and look, well, I wish, like some sort of 1970s surfer. And I'm going to use that image as I stand before you, because for me, reflecting on the 3.5 years I've been the mayor, and then taken in terms of the last 6 months that have been turbocharged with the change of government. For me, as we look forward, I would draw your mind to that imagery of the Guinness ad of waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for the perfect wave. And there's been many iterations, the Oxcam Arc and now the partnership. There is something here, all 3 previous speakers have said that, about the region, but the perfect wave, is it about to come? And I believe there is a possibility, but like all surfers, if you're not there ready, you're going to miss it. As you have said, I'm the only Metro Mayor in the area. I'm very proud of that role, and for all the gallivanting around the country and being in Leeds yesterday with Lou Haig, the Metro Mayors were invited very early doors to the local government, to the national government, to be part of the 10-year growth plans, to be part of the ambition to turn the country around. And I think that's where maybe today, if people want to think about it, it's not for me to tell other areas of the partnership group as to what the design of those combined authority areas should be. But my question would be to all of you, and indeed to the board, is it's the direction of travel, devolution, and there are format is combined authorities, some cases mayoral. And my challenge would be, as I look forward, is an ask that as we come together embracing the journey, which I really do believe can be transformational for the country, is what other combined authorities are willing to work with me in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough to make this geography work. Because to be honest, I don't want to be the lone surfer. I want to be out with the northern boys, the Andys, the Steves, hanging out like bros and making a case for the north of England. The east of England, the England's economic heartland, I haven't got it. And that's been a frustration. So really, that's my challenge to the room. Where do you individually, whatever organisation you represent, where are you on the devolution journey? Where would it fit in with what is being articulated by the government? I'm on board. I just want to catch the wave with a few others. So thank you.
Thank you, Nick. If that hasn't woken everybody up, I'm not sure it will. So we've got time for a couple of questions only, and then we'll crack on. So would anybody like to start? Nigel, if you wouldn't mind just saying who you are.
Yep, Nigel Tipple, Chief Exec of Oxfordshire Local Enterprise Partnership, now part of the Oxfordshire County Council Local Authority Control Structure. Nick, it was a question to you really, following your very passionate surfer speech. What opportunities are there for you and the other Metro Mayors to actually spend some time in the region helping our local authorities to think through what that benefit of moving towards a different voluntary structure might look like, rather than a mandated approach? And I know there's some lessons that you've learned the hard way that you could share in that kind of environment.
I mean, I could talk and talk and talk. I mean, if you're asking about the example for other mayors coming to our region, I would argue we've already had that opportunity, but it's one that I was able to enjoy in terms of the ambition that a very astute and very professional politician called Andy Burnham, who obviously realised, I mean, he is an ex-graduate of Fitzwilliam College in Cambridge, so he is he is aware of the Cambridge University, Cambridgeshire ecosystem. So they're already doing it to some extent, the Innovate Manchester, Innovate Cambridge model. I would argue that there is opportunities where other metro mayors may well see areas within the current partnership thing, be it Oxford, be it in the middle, the Milton Keynes, Buckinghamshire, Bedfordshire area. They may want to kind of see that, because that link up is one of the things that's been encouraged by government. And as I say, I'll take what I can in terms of the strength of working together with other mayors in whatever area. It could be about transport policy, but it could also be about skills development. It could also be working with business. But they're already seeing our area for what it is, and I'm not precious about it. I could see a benefit where maybe Claire from the East Midlands Combined Authority Mayor would also want to link up with maybe Oxfordshire. And of course, there's other combined authorities that may come along on the way. So it's already happening, and don't miss out, catch the wave.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for the question, Nigel. We've got one more before we move on. Zoe. Hold it like an ice cream, Zoe, so we can hear you.
Thanks for that. I'm going to make an observation, then I'd like to pose a question. So my observation, working with pan-regional partnerships across the UK, is that a pan-regional partnership is a different function and plays a different role to that of the devolved combined authorities and the counties. I really think there is a really quite significant difference between the two. That's my observation. I think it's really important, therefore, when we make the case, there is that difference. But I'd love to hear from Bridget and Susan and Liz and hear your responses on that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. Bridget?
Thank you. Well, you're quite right. So, you know, what's special about it is that it's a coalition of the willing. And you know, we don't have powers, and we've had very little money. But there's none of us in local government work in isolation anymore. I've been a councillor now for over 16 years. That used to be the case. You were very inward-looking, very insular. You know, combined authority has made us think about a wider geography. But actually, even that's not big enough. So, you know, we're all facing issues which aren't issues just constrained within our own boundaries. The issues that we are tackling are much wider. So there are massive advantages to working in partnerships. And, you know, those people in the rooms who are council leaders will know our lives are all about partnerships. So the job's a much bigger job these days than it used to be, because we are all part of a multitude of partnerships. Some of them economic, some to do with transport, some to do with environment, and some, you know, like the current pan-regional partnership, which cross all those boundaries. I think it's going to be, you know, if the government decide not to fund this anymore, that's sad, but you know, we have to accept that was the last government's kind of baby, and a new government wants its own babies. I do hope that they aren't so short-sighted as not to realise that there are opportunities here, which if we are all encouraged to work together, we will, as I said, in relation to the environment, will allow us to take full advantage of the environmental opportunities, and as my colleagues have said, will allow us to take full advantage of the economic opportunities well and start competing seriously on that international stage. But none of us can do it alone, and we can't even do it just within combined authorities.
I'm sorry, we're going to have to move on, Susan, but perhaps hold your comments for, because I'm being told off, we're running out of time. Councillor Andy Graham. Andy, you recently joined our board representing Oxfordshire authorities. I know you've been involved in some of our work for much longer than that. What are your early reflections?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I think what I wanted to really focus on is people and partnerships, because partnerships come and go. Some succeed, some fail. We know that ourselves. I mean, just look around us and we've all been involved in partnerships, and it's the essence of partnership is that there is the working together, but there is also risk. And I remember when the pan-regional partnership was actually first mooted and the local authorities came together, there was an absolute silence as when it was, who's going to sign up? And so I put my hand up and said, right, well, let's start the ball rolling. We've got to take a risk. We might not succeed, but isn't that the essence of learning? And really, when we want to bring people, we need to think about the legacy, the young people, that we are leaving something behind. Because if we're not leaving anything behind for young people, then we should go home. Because anything that is just self-centered, self-interest, is a disservice to what we are here for. And I do believe that the way we can address that, I mean, if we look around the room, how many young people can we really say are fairly represented? Not many. So we're going to have to do something systemically about it. And some of that is about the skills that we are developing for the future. We need to listen to young people on social media. We need to use AI, make it more accessible, the information that's needed about technology, about new industries. We've got to invest in it. Stop doing what we've done before, because we know what we've done before. What we don't know, and we need to take a risk with, is what's coming down the road. And I kind of firmly believe that we've got skills and we've got a whole plethora of opportunities and mechanisms, but we've got to use them, apply them. And this partnership, the Pan-Regional Partnership, whatever happens to it, don't lose the investment of what we have actually started and we've set up. But we've got to actually translate it in a language that younger people can actually access. And we've got to make sure that we actually do it and not afraid of the fact that the government might change its mind. We don't know what the government's going to do. But we do know, if we have any values that we really believe in, that this work that has been carried out by so many people has to go forward. And I, for one, as a leader, will put my hand up again and actually say, whatever and however we transfer the work we've done, I will, as our local authority, will take a risk and I will invest more, not less, in what we've done before, in subscriptions financially, because I know that as long as we have young people at the heart of it, and we centre it there, I'll put more in there and our authority will be there for it. So I hope, in a sense, that's a marker for a way forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. I think that is a beautiful segue into one of our region's Vice-Chancellors and Chair of the ARC Universities Group, Professor Alistair Fitt.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to reflect a bit on some anniversaries. So last night I was in Birmingham at the 20th anniversary Times Higher Education dinner, a sit-down meal for 1,000 where a mid-ranking comedian tries to humiliate as many Vice-Chancellors as possible. What could be more fun? It's also the 50th anniversary this month of the setting up of the university's superannuation scheme, the biggest, best, worst, most disastrous, quirkiest university's pension scheme. It's the 20th anniversary of when people first started talking about something called the ARC. And when people, if you look at this document, ARC Journey, it's the 20th anniversary of when people identified the ARC as a place where something amazing could possibly happen. But it's also the first anniversary of Bacon Rolls. And Bacon Rolls was a year ago today up there where people from the ARC Universities Group and East West Rail and PRP and England's Economic Heartland and the Supercluster first sat down together and said, you know what, us 5 organisations could really be a big part in making all this happen, rather than all of us acting independently. And when we had that meeting a year ago, there were a whole load of asks, and these weren't carefully written down or anything like that. They were just tossed around in the air, and they included all sorts of stuff like setting up the Art Universities Group student panel and having the 5 work together and talk to each other a lot, and having East West Rail funded and having lots of funky projects going on, and having some statements about East West Rail electrification, all sorts of things. And every single one of those has happened. Every one and more has come true. And there's huge momentum in the whole region, and everything's fine except for one tiny problem, which is it looks like they're not going to fund the PRP. And so my ask going forward is, if the funding does stop, what is going to take the place of that to, well, what would it do? Not really coordinate things. And we're not talking here about something or some organisation that goes to elected councillors and says, you should do this, you should do that. That's not what we're talking about here at all. We're talking about something that has convening power and can exploit opportunities, and can exploit the opportunities of all the coalitions of the willing that we've got going forward, and turn this region into, it really could be the best region in the world for innovation and good living and nature and ecosystem and everything. So my main ask for the year going forward is, what is going to do that? How are we going to do it? How are we going to make sure this opportunity isn't lost? And I don't mind what form it is, or who it is, or where it is, or what happens, but we just need somebody to look from above about what's going to happen. So that's my ask for next year. Thank you.
Alistair, thank you. Well, that's another lovely segue, because you mentioned innovation, and next is Dr. Barbara Ginelli from Harwell Campus and the Science and Technologies Facilities Council and UK Research and Innovation. So Barbara, your reflections.
Thank you. I'm going to start with the international perspective, because I think ultimately we all together really want to become very competitive as a nation. And the international landscape is really moving at pace. There is an increased competition from a number of nations around the world. So in order to become that really competitive nation, we really need to take pragmatic steps. And I see that obviously the sum of the parts of all the initiatives across the UK will actually help us in that pragmatic approach. And I think the PRP is one of those initiatives that is really aiming at getting all of us together across all the areas that you've heard from the rest of the board, in terms of environment initiatives, innovation, infrastructure. So how do we do that? And why is this important? I think, in order to drive innovation, it's all about people and those networks, but it needs to be facilitated. I always say that innovation is a contact sport, and you really need to put effort in enabling that connectivity and in enabling that partnership. And I talk from my experience, even within the Harwell campus, which is one of the ecosystems within this amazing region. Until you actually do that, even if you have amazing infrastructure, amazing science, and fantastic and highly skilled people, you actually cannot drive that growth and innovation forward. It's really about bringing people together, the local authorities, the businesses, the scientists, universities. All of this needs to come together. Now, having had the great opportunity to chair the Innovation and Economy subgroup within the PRP, I've seen firsthand what the effort that the team has put in actually enabling these activities. One of the things, the network of networks, bringing 47 organizations across the region to actually gather together interns in different areas across the region, Silverstone, Cambridge, Milton Keynes, and in this month, I think, or next year in Oxfordshire, is really powerful. these activities need to be enabled and facilitated, otherwise they do not happen by themselves. And then the link to the wider ecosystems and the supercluster board. So all of these things need to be leveraged, but need to be leveraged proactively. Again, another initiative within that subgroup is the International Investment Prospectus. And I've seen a few of those projects really being supported by the activities led by this partnership. For example, the Green Horizon project that was put through the investment prospectus as one of one of the projects, and that's been really supported by the team and brought to UK Reef and other conferences to really support the engagement with the investor community, but actually also enabling them to tap into the wider networks, clusters, innovation capabilities, infrastructure that we actually have access to, but we actually need to bring together proactively. So this is really my thought. There are lots of initiatives that we've already started through this. Let's not lose them. Whatever shape this will take, I agree, and I don't remember who said, it's about people. If we are all willing to drive this forward, it's about us and all of us, not just the board, not just the people that have been directly involved in this partnership. It's all of us working together to actually really drive this forward if we believe in it, and then leveraging the strengths of this region to support the rest of the UK and connecting to the other really thriving ecosystems across the UK to become that sum of the parts. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Al, you've been so patient. You run a very successful business and you're on our board because you chair the CPCA Business Board. So your reflections, please.
Thank you. I think I'm here on the end for light entertainment, to be honest, but I'm going to follow the analogy that Dr. Nick used in terms of surfing the waves of opportunity. Representing the business board, I think often we feel sometimes we're the captain of the ship, looking for a sense of direction to steer for calmer waters. And often it's confidence which is key when it comes to the economic landscape. And there is an element of we tend to look at economic growth. We grow our businesses, we look for resource, and when we run out of resource, we look around and say, how do we get more? And one of the key things I've seen in my role on the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority Business Board is actually thinking in advance, joining the dots, bringing together stakeholders to recognise that growth happens in parallel to infrastructure, to transport, to communication, to housing, to all those other elements. And in many ways, the same considerations, I think, happen when we talk about the work of the partnership over the last couple of years. Sometimes I can be a bit direct in the sense that we've got some fantastic research, we've got some amazing data, but so what? It only gets a what for me when it's used for purpose and where there's a measure of impact. And so sometimes we forget that actually one of the overarching roles, the thing that I think I've seen the most evidence of, is actually about signposting what's useful and purposeful. Whether from a business point of view, that's to save the work being duplicated and triplicated in different pockets, or whether it's to provide a steering guidance which is more cost effective. I echo many of the comments that have been shared today, that this region is an economic powerhouse, but there are always those other factors in terms of strategic planning that give the control over the pace, whilst at the same time thinking about actually this is place and space we want to live in. So whether that's the environment, the housing planning, the ability to get to work in under an hour, what a novelty that would be, they're all factors to consider. But the business voice, and I don't in any way pretend to speak for the entire business community, but certainly within the CPCA region, the most important thing we've seen is visibility, transparency, and accessibility to information, projects, and planning that in turn has given us confidence to make more strategic decisions.
Thank you, Al. I'm in dreadful trouble for running over, but it was so important to hear from all of you fully. Please hold your questions for the next session. Our next speaker is standing in the wings. So as we change over, please will you show your appreciation for our 8 board members. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.